Top, dead center, Elin, top, dead center. Top, bottom, don't forget. Okay guys, welcome to the Rusty Beauties garage and the 1976 TR6. So we have the camshaft installed, the crankshaft installed. In the last video we put the pistons and connecting rods and everything. So now it is time to do the timing. It's time for timing, guys. Good times. So I needed that not to self, not to make a mistake and degree the cam 180 degrees off, because I've done that multiple times because I started on the wrong foot. I used to have a degree wheel that had 0 at the top dead center and 0 at the bottom dead center, which is normal because 0 at the bottom dead center refers to bottom dead center and degrees before and after bottom dead center. But I don't care about those. All I care about is degrees from top dead center. So I made this degree wheel, which is starting from 0 at the top dead center and going to 180 at bottom dead center, and then it goes back down to 0 on the other side of the bottom dead center. I still have these little numbers here that refer to degrees from bottom dead center in case I need them. I barely use those, so I made my big letters on the outside to refer to top dead center. By the way, you can download this degree wheel in PDF from my website in case you want to make a degree wheel for yourself. And I actually had to do some modification here to my adapter because I made it years ago. That was the first adapter that I made here, and it was so crooked, like I welded it in a hurry, and I didn't like it, that I never found time to fix it. Well, now I actually fixed it finally. So I'm gonna show you here how I fixed this, and I'm gonna give you tips on how to make your own if you want to. So without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking. So this time we're gonna make a new degree wheel because I have multiple, but the one that I use the most, somebody borrowed it, and now we're gonna make a new one. So this setup is for a Spitfire, and you can see I used an old gear here that goes at the end of the crankshaft. I used a piece of wood, stuck a piece of plywood to it, and made a hole in the middle, and that fits over this old socket. And it is pretty tight inside, you see. It's not so nice and tight here that I don't even need to clamp it. So that's for my Spitfire. And as you are rebuilding a TR6 engine in this case, you can use your old gear from the crankshaft. It has the exact diameter and the slot for the woodroof key, or your old sleeve if you're replacing the sleeve. And what you can do is, because the diameter is too big, you can weld a washer here. You just need to tuck it to places and take an old socket and weld it to that. And then you can make the hole in the center of your degree wheel the exact size of the socket, so you can put it tight, and that's gonna spin just like this. And if your piece of wood is thin like this, I recommend putting something solid behind it so it can have more friction. In my case, I had this adapter made long time ago. Like, that's probably my first adapter, and it was all welded crooked, and it was like, I kept saying that I'm gonna fix it, so finally today I fixed it. What I did was I put it on the lathe, I chucked it inside here because that's my true diameter, and then I machined all the rest based on that diameter. So now I know that all these diameters here are concentric. And I also made this is polyurethane actually. That was a differential mount that I had just a single one, so it wasn't very helpful. So I made this adapter that goes nice and tight here. This diameter matches here, and also this diameter matches here, pretty nice and tight. There you go. And now this degree wheel matches this diameter here, and it is again nice and tight here. So I'm gonna cut this and I'm gonna glue it to this. Now, I know that many of you have seen many of my timing videos. I know that I've done many of them, but I'm gonna do a proper one again with all the details for the people who haven't seen those videos. So I'm sorry if that's gonna be boring for you, but I'm gonna go through the details anyways. So what do we mean by degreeing the camshaft? Well, that's the relevance between the camshaft and the crankshaft. We need to position them in such a way that they work together. When a piston is going down, the intake valve opens at exactly precise timing and closes exactly when we want it to close. So for that, the camshaft and the crankshaft need to talk to each other. And of course, there's different camshafts that have different timing, so that's why we need a camshaft spec. And here is our camshaft spec. In this case, we have good parts GP2 camshaft. We have a duration of 278 degrees. So what we're talking here is degrees on the crankshaft. The crankshaft needs to rotate twice while the camshaft needs to rotate once. So of course the degrees also are gonna be double. That's why the number of the teeth on the camshaft gear are twice the amount of the teeth on the crankshaft gear. So for example, in this particular case, in TR6, it says it even in the manual here, moving the camshaft by one tooth equals 8.5 degrees on the camshaft, but that transfers to 17 degrees on the crankshaft. So having that in mind, we can continue. So back to our spec here, 278 degrees duration means how long a valve stays open from the moment it starts to open until it is completely closed. 278 degrees on the crankshaft. Here we have the cam lift, the valve lift. The cam lift is different than the valve lift because the cam lifts the tappet lifts the push rod pushes on the rocker moves 15 thou or 17 thou, two different numbers here in this case, until the lash is cleared, and then it starts opening the valve. But also the pivot on the rocker is not in the center, it is offset a little bit from the center. So one side goes up 258 thou, but the other side goes down 362 thou. That's because of the ratio of the rocker, and because of the different clearance, we have different lift on the valve for the intake and the exhaust. So this is the spec, this is the information that we have for the camshaft, but the most important part here that we need for the timing is this, the center line, 110 after top dead center for the intake. That's the number that we need. What does this number mean? Center line means that 110 after top dead center, so we're turning clockwise, right? That's how we go. Top dead center, and then we have 110 after top dead center is where they want us to have the camshaft positioned in such way that the intake of the first cylinder is fully open. The camshaft is going to be at its peak. Well, our degree wheel is not positioned properly on the crankshaft yet, so that's not the real position, but that's what we are aiming for. So first of all, we need to find the true top dead center of the piston, which we are pretty much there now. Then we're gonna turn the degree wheel on the crankshaft without turning the crankshaft, and we're gonna position it. So now when we turn the crankshaft, we know the correct correspondence to it, but that was not very precise. We're gonna make it precise. I'll show you the procedure. So once we have the degree wheel positioned correctly on the crankshaft, we're gonna turn it to 110 degrees after top dead center, and then we're gonna go and we're gonna position our camshaft where the peak of the lobe of the intake of the first cylinder is up, and when both shafts are exactly where we want them, we're gonna put the chain on, we're gonna lock them together, and from there they're matched. Then all the other cams on the camshaft are gonna fall into the correct position for the other cylinders. We need to match one, and all the other ones are gonna go where they belong. Okay, let's do it. Well, that sounds easy, And it is easy, however, there are a few tricks that we need to know about. And that's, for example, we can't eyeball the top dead center, because if you look at the piston now, because of the shape of the crankshaft, if we say that this is our crankshaft and that's how it turns, now in this position of the crankshaft, when it is on its side and it moves up, our connecting rod and piston move a lot. For every degree on the crankshaft, the piston moves a lot up. I don't know how much, but it moves a lot. However, when we're in this position of the crankshaft, just before top dead center, from here to here, there's lots of degrees. That's like probably 20 degrees from before top dead center to after top dead center. But for this distance on the crankshaft, where the bottom of the connecting rod moves left and right, but the piston is kind of stationary. It moves, of course, but it moves so little that it is almost unnoticeable. Where is it exactly top dead center? It's still moving up. Now it is all the way up. And now I'm gonna keep turning the crankshaft. And you see, the piston almost doesn't move. You can't really tell. So which of these multiple degrees is the true top dead center? We don't know. What if we drop the piston down a certain amount and mark this position on the degree wheel and somehow memorize this height of the piston, and then go around until the piston goes all the way down and comes back to this same position here. So if we compare this position on the crankshaft with the other position, which was somewhere on the other side of the top dead center, they should be exactly the same distance. So the distance that the piston traveled down from the true top dead center, which we don't know yet, to this position, and the distance that now the piston needs to travel up to this true top dead center should be exactly the same, right? So the center between the two positions that we marked on the crankshaft should be our true top dead center. So how do we mark that though? We can't eyeball it. We can't put our finger there and do that. We need to have something more solid. Okay, well, for that I'm gonna use something called piston stop. So for our piston stop, I need to put at least 2 of these studs, the head studs, and this plate that I made, and the holes are oval like that because it works for TR6 engine and Spitfire, and also has extra holes here that I'm gonna show you later what we're gonna use for, but for now we're gonna use it as a piston stop only. I just want to show you. Maybe I should put one more stud here like this to hold my plate in place. Okay, I'll put 4 studs, but I don't know if I'm gonna use them all. Then we're gonna lock the plate in place so it doesn't move. Okay, so the plate is pretty solid there, and in this hole in the middle, which is threaded, we can put a bolt. And when we put this bolt, we're gonna make sure that it protrudes underneath. Doesn't really matter how much, as long as it is below top dead center. So this much should be fine, and because it's pretty shaky, my bolt, the threads are pretty loose, I use this nut underneath to make it solid, to lock it, and now it is solid there. So you see where I'm going with that, right? Now we have something that the piston can hit and stop at the same place, whether the connecting rod is coming from this direction up or it's coming from this direction. Both times it's gonna stop at the same place. So now we can carefully turn until the piston hits the piston stop at some point. So we're going counterclockwise right now. So this is, according to me, 30 and a half on this side of top dead center, right? Well, I should go with 30 degrees. So it happens that we have pretty round number here, but it was just by fluke, right? Because we put that in a very random position. But we have 30 degrees to travel to top dead center. So now if the degree wheel is positioned perfectly on the crankshaft, if we turn the other way now, all the way, it should stop at exactly 30 degrees on the other side of the top dead center. But it didn't. It stopped at, what is this, 36. So this means that our degree wheel is a little bit off on the crankshaft. So we have 30 on this side and 36 on this side. This is total of 66. So if our degree wheel was positioned correctly on the crankshaft, then it should have stopped at 33 degrees on this side and 33 on the other side. Well, we can move it. So now we can keep the crankshaft where it is and move it to 33. So now we are at 33 on this side. Let's see if it is going to stop at 33 on the other side. On the button. So our degree wheel and the crankshaft are matched perfectly. So if I just go back a little bit so we don't touch the bolt anymore, I can remove it now. And if we turn this way and we stop at 0, now we know that this is our true top dead center. Now you can do the same with a dial gauge. You can put a dial gauge inside and measure this distance, but we're gonna do the dial gauge trick with the camshaft. Well, I don't have such a long dial gauge to put in this hole and reach the camshaft, but we can do something else. So we're gonna remove this just for a second. We're gonna take 2 of our brand new tappets and we're gonna lubricate them a little bit and we're gonna put them in their bores. Now, if you have a long dial gauge, you can put it directly inside the tappet, right? But I don't. That's why I'm gonna take these contraptions that I made. I cut old push rods, I welded a washer, and then I can put a spring on top that is gonna help pushing them back down when the camshaft pushes them up. And I can put this plate again. So that's the second purpose of this plate, right? We said that there are 2 different purposes that this plate is gonna serve. Okay, nice and solid. And now we have this way to know where the camshaft is at every particular moment. Which, why are they not moving? Oh, okay, I just did it again. Now they're moving, but I'm actually turning the camshaft because I'm trying to turn the camshaft by turning the crankshaft, which should work as long as we have the chain installed. Now we don't have the chain installed, and that's a bit of an issue because we have the degree wheel there now and we can't put it on the crankshaft. But don't worry, we're gonna remove the degree wheel and we're gonna put the chain, and we don't need to do the whole procedure again because now we can position it at top dead center and not move it and then put the degree wheel back to top dead center, right? So that's my top dead center. Now I can take the pointer out, take the degree wheel out, put the chain on, put the degree wheel back on, and put the pointer back and adjust them. Top dead center, right? We haven't moved the crankshaft, so it is still at top dead center. As long as the degree wheel goes back at top dead center, we're fine. Now we can put the chain also on the camshaft, but before we connect the chain, we can kind of eyeball the situation that we're looking for, right? Now we can position the crankshaft exactly at 110 after top dead center, right? That's our desired position. And we can actually eyeball the peak of the lobe here, because that's what we want to match with the 110 after top dead center. So we can turn the camshaft. Now the exhaust is moving, and now the intake starts going up, and now it starts going down. So somewhere here, that's more or less the position of the camshaft that we want to match with the 110 of the crank. Now we can loosen this. We have to be really careful not to touch the degree wheel and the pointer at all, because the friction here is not great and my pointer is not super solid. So if I touch them, I might lose my adjustment for top dead center. And now I can try and not move the camshaft while I put the chain on, but I also need to match the hose. So let me see where the hose are. The hose are there, so I need to put the chain pretty much, come on, pretty much like this. And now if the holes don't match, and now I actually put it like really well, the holes are matching, but if the holes don't match, I need to turn the gear, not the camshaft, right? Until the holes match. But somehow I managed to put them pretty close. Wow. Now we can tighten them again. Not super tight. And now the two will turn together. The pistons are going up and down, and the push rods are going up and down. However, like I said, we can't eyeball it. We're gonna do similar thing like what we did with the piston stop, but this time at the intake push rod, and we'll see how close to the true peak of the lobe we are. All right, I put a dial gauge on the intake of the first cylinder, and now we can see how the push rod is going up and down. So we're gonna find the point in which it is all the way up. That's our peak of the lobe, right? But we need to find the center of the peak of the lobe, and just like on the piston for the top dead center, we have the same situation here. The center of the lobe moves from left to right, and that doesn't affect the height too much, so we can stay in the same spot, the same height pretty much for 5 or 10 degrees. Like, let's see now where it's gonna stop. Still going up. Wow, that's high. So right here somewhere it is at its peak, right? But you see, I can turn the degree wheel for a few degrees and the needle doesn't move. Just now it started moving, you see, so maybe I moved it for 20 or 30 degrees. So we don't know where exactly is the center. We know that this is the peak, but we don't know where the center of the peak is. So I'm gonna zero it here. Okay, that's 0. Let's test it and see if it is gonna go past 0. No, that's how far it goes. It goes to 0 and then it starts going down. Okay, so how do we find now the center? Well, we can do the same thing as with the piston. Remember how we dropped the piston down certain amount on both sides of the top dead center, and we noted the positions on the crankshaft at both sides of the top dead center, and then we found the center between these two marks. In the same way, we can drop the push rod down, let's say 50 thou. This is like a rule of thumb. If this is our cam, let's say, and the lobe is here and this is our push rod, we can turn the camshaft until the push rod drops down 50 thousandths, somewhere here. We can note the position on the crankshaft, and then we can turn it the other way around so it can climb back up, and then it drops 50 thou on the other side. Then we can note the position on the crankshaft at this position as well, and then the center between the two, of course, is going to be our peak of the lobe. So let's go clockwise first. So let's turn the crankshaft until the cam allows the push rod to drop 50 thou. Right there. So what is this on our crankshaft? 157 degrees after top dead center. So now let's go backwards, and we're gonna go again through the peak, and we're gonna continue until the push rod drops down another 50 thou. But there's a trick here. Now that we went backwards, the slack of the chain here moved on this side. This is tight. Here we have a little bit of slack. But the normal rotation of the engine is in that direction. So this slack is always going to be on this side. So we need to get rid of this backlash. So we're going to go past 50 here, as we were going in this direction. And now we're going to come back to 50, but turning clockwise. This way the slack is now back here. And let's look at this position now on the crankshaft. This is 41. So the center point between 41 and 157, somewhere here, is our true peak of the lobe of the camshaft. So that's easy math. 41 plus 157, 198. Divide that by 2. This is 99. So our peak of the lobe is at 99 degrees on the crankshaft, right here. And you see that we are at 0 there. Yeah, but that's not good for us because we wanted it to be at 110. So what we're going to do now is we're going to undo these two bolts, and we're going to turn our crank to 110 without turning the camshaft, because we know that now the camshaft is in the correct position. We just want to move the crankshaft to the correct position. So now when we turn the crankshaft, the cam won't move, right? So we're going to turn it to 110. And we want to bolt the camshaft again. Yeah, but now we have a problem. The holes won't match. We have to undo the chain, turn the gear only, and put the chain back again without moving the camshaft or the crankshaft. Now they're both in the position that we want them to be locked in. We just need to figure out how to move a little bit. But what's going to happen here now, if we go a full tooth, here in the manual it says 1 tooth on the camshaft chain wheel is 8.5 degrees on the camshaft, which transfers to 17 degrees on the crank. So if we move the wheel by 1 tooth, we're gonna go 17 from where we were. We were at 100, so it's gonna go to 117. That's too far. We want it half that way. But what it says also here is turning the chain wheel quarter turn on the cam turns the cam by half a tooth, which is going to be now 4.25 degrees on the cam or 8.5 on the crank. So let's see if we can do that. Now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees, which is one more tooth, I guess. Quarter turn, they say. Okay, and now the holes match pretty well. So we can put the bolts back in, and hopefully we haven't moved the crank or the cam. Sometimes it happens that we move them accidentally, but now we're gonna double check. Again, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go 50 thousandths down on the camshaft. Ah, I went past. Okay, and this time we stopped at 166. I don't know if you see it, but I look at it this way. When I look at it this way, it is pretty accurate. So 166. Now let's go backwards. We're back at the top. Again, we start dropping down to 50 thousandths, but we're gonna go past and we're gonna go clockwise. Okay, that's good. And here we have, I would say, a little bit less than 50. Let's go with 50. So 166 plus 50 is 216 divided by 2, that is 108 degrees. So unfortunately we can't go closer than that with this gear. So we are at 108, the spec says 110. So as the spec says here, the minimum amount that we can move it by is 8.5. We can move it only by half a tooth. On TR4 engines, and TR3 and TR2 of course, you can flip this gear backwards. And if you flip it, then you can actually add two more dimensions, two more, what do you call that? Actually, you can turn there by quarter tooth. And quarter tooth would equal to about 4.25 degrees. So on the TR4 and TR3 and TR2 engines, you can move by 4 degrees. Here, the minimum is 8.5 degrees. Okay, here I'm just gonna give you the result of what happens when you flip the gear the other way around, or when you turn it 90 degrees, you end up with half a tooth or quarter tooth adjustment. But if you want to know why this is happening, stay until the end of this video when we're gonna have a little bit of more scientific, let's call it, dive into this matter. So stay tuned for that. It's at the end of the video. So if you can't hit the mark exactly, it is better to be a little bit advanced than a little bit retarded, because for the simple reason that your chain at some point it's going to stretch, right? And as it is stretching, your camshaft becomes retarded, obviously. So that's why you want to be advanced a little bit, so when the chain stretches, you go to the center line. If it is retarded, it's going to retard even more as the chain stretches. So for this camshaft specifically, somewhere I read it in the Good Parts website, that actually you can play with it. If you want low range torque, you can advance it a little bit, and if you want high end torque, then you can retard it a little bit. But they recommend 110 plus or minus 4 or 5 degrees. It's perfectly fine. I'm gonna do it like this. I'm gonna keep it at 108. That's perfect. So now we are timed. That's it. Of course, we're gonna take the bolts out. We're gonna put tab washers, but we're not gonna undo the chain, so we're good. And if this was the standard camshaft for TR6, I would go and check it with another method, which is the intake and the exhaust valves overlap at some point. They're equally open at top dead center, but that's only for the standard camshaft for TR6. For this one, the duration of the intake and the exhaust starts and ends at different place, so that won't work there. So I can't double check it in a different method, but I'm sure that we are where we want to be. We are at exactly 108 before top dead after top dead center. But I want to do another check. I'm going to double check the top dead center of the degree wheel, because something might have happened here. We might have turned it accidentally on the crankshaft. We might have pushed the pointer somehow, and maybe our baseline, which was top dead center, was wrong, because that's how I made mistakes in the past. I had the degree wheel set wrongly on the crankshaft, and then everything else was wrong from there. So I just want to reconfirm one more time that my degree wheel is still positioned properly on the crankshaft, so the top dead center on the crankshaft corresponds to the top dead center of the degree wheel. But this time I'm going to do it without a piston stop. I'm going to remove the plate and we're going to do it with the gauge, so I can show you how you can do it with a gauge as well. There you go. So we're going to put the dial gauge directly on the piston. So now we're going to turn the crankshaft until we are almost at top dead center or somewhere before. Okay, say somewhere here, okay? Let's zero it here. It's virtually the same thing that we did with the piston stop, but this time we're doing it with a dial gauge. Okay, so 0 here, and here we are at 38, 37 and a half, I would say. And now let's go the other way. This time we could have gone through top dead center, but doesn't matter. I'm going backwards. What did we say? 37 and a half? Here the chain doesn't really matter because there's no chain between the piston and the crank. I keep going past it. Okay, and when I look here, this is exactly 37 and a half. So our degree wheel stayed at top dead center in relevance to the crankshaft. So that's it, we're done. And this, guys, is everything that you need to know about timing Triumph engine in particular, and more specifically TR6 or TR250 and GT6 with double row chain. Now if you have a single row chain, originally TR250 and GT6 and Spitfire have a single row chain, that's where you can flip the gear and all this magic happens with the quarter tooth adjustment or 4 degrees on the crankshaft. So all you need to know is that when you turn the gear 90 degrees, that gives you half a tooth adjustment, but if you flip it, that gives you quarter tooth adjustment and 3/4 tooth of adjustment. However, if you want to know why that happens, in the next part of the video we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into this matter of the black magic of the Triumph cam gear. Because they couldn't make it adjustable and make it simple, they made it complicated, and the amount of actually engineering that went into this simple gear is amazing. I don't know how these engineers in the 50s and even 40s, they were coming up with these amazing solutions without any computers or anything. They were really, really smart people, believe me. We are way, way behind them because we have the Triumphs, the computers, to assist us. Anyways, again, I still think that much easier solution would have been to make the gear adjustable, but they came up with a very clever solution to make it adjustable as far as possible without any moving parts on the gears. So if you're interested in that, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. And for that, I'd like to say thank you to Jürgen, who is one of you guys. He is a follower from Germany. After one of my videos, he actually emailed me and he said that he's done a little bit more scientific research on the gears. He measured one, he put it in SolidWorks, I believe. He's actually building a SolidWorks engine, so that would be interesting to see at some point. But once he put it in SolidWorks, he was able to measure everything and figure out how the magic happens, how by turning it 90 degrees it gives you half a tooth and flipping it around gives you another quarter of a tooth adjustment. And he came up actually with 2 different solutions, which makes me think that all these years I was wrong with what I was thinking. At some point I'm gonna measure one of these gears and I'm gonna figure out whether I was right or wrong. But anyways, both solutions are right. I just think that here they might have used a different solution, not mine. So my thought was until now that the axis that goes through the 3 holes in the center and the axis that goes through these 3 holes in the center are not perpendicular. I thought that this angle, for example, was 91 degrees and this one was 89. And that's a possible solution, but I think that they actually used the other solution, which is way simpler. And let me explain what I mean by that. We're gonna make it complicated, but I'm assuming that if you're still here, you're interested to see all that. So this is a TR6 gear. That's actually the one that we took out from this engine. And this is a GT6, that's from my GT6, the old gear from my GT6. So they're virtually the same. absolutely the same diameter, the holes match and everything. The only thing is one of them is double row, one is single row. Now here the thing is, I thought that the holes were worn, but I think there's something else here, because look at this pin. This pin doesn't fit in this hole, doesn't fit in this hole, but it fits in this one and it fits in this one. So I think that also has something to do with alignment. I don't think these two holes are worn, because only this one and this one were used for all these years. So why is this one worn then? You see the marks here from the bolts? Same here. This one and this one were used. So why is this one worn and this one is not? And why is this one worn as well? So I think that even that has something to do with it, because it allows the gear to rotate a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to go that deep. But if you take two drill bits and we clamp them on the vise like this. You know what? I'm gonna put it the other way around. Doesn't really matter which way it is. Now you see this plate here? So that's because this hole is a little bit bigger, but I'm sure that when you put it on the crankshaft, the center hole is gonna fix it in one place. On the crankshaft, it won't be able to play this way. I'm pretty sure. Anyways, now for the purposes of our video, we're gonna have to turn it, I guess. Hold on, I'm gonna go find more gears. Oh well, I went to find more gears like this to be able to stack them one on top of the other and show you the difference. Unfortunately, I can't find. I found the TR4 one, but the TR4 one is different. It has different distance here on the holes. But you can see how the TR4 one is symmetrical on both sides. So you can flip it and do what we're just gonna explain now. So anyways, you see how these two gears match absolutely perfectly, the number of teeth and everything. So I'm just getting rid of the lash in one direction so they can both be in the same position. And you can see you can also turn them 90 degrees, both of them, and still have them matching. But what if we turn this only one 90 degrees? There you go. Now we have half a tooth difference here, right, from before. Let's first explain why this is happening, and then we're gonna go into the quarter tooth. So why is it happening? Well, very simple. I thought it was because the lines were not perpendicular, so we have a little bit of offset, but it is such a simple explanation actually. The gear itself has 42 teeth. And like we said, from one tooth to the other, so to turn it from this position to this position, that is 8.5 degrees. Because, Alexa, what is 360 divided by 42?
360 divided by 42 is approximately 8.5714.
8.5714. So for the purpose of this video, we're gonna go with 8.5. So 8.5 degrees between two teeth. That corresponds to 17 degrees on the crankshaft, because the crankshaft only has 21 teeth. So 42 teeth. Well, if we divide that by half, we still have a whole number, which is 21, right? So if we rotate it 180 degrees, we are rotating the gear by 21 teeth, and nothing changes because we are rotating by a whole number. But if we divide the 180 degrees in half, that means that now we're going to rotate the gear by 10.5 teeth, because 21 teeth divided by 2 is 10.5. So that's how simple it is. By rotating it by just quarter of a turn, you're rotating the gear by 10.5 teeth, and now you have half. You have a decimal in the number, and it is half a tooth. That's how simple it is. Okay, now what about the quarter tooth though? First I'm gonna show you that it is possible, and then we're gonna explain why. So now we are right at half tooth, but if we pick it up and flip it and rotate it, now you see that we have quarter tooth offset. But if we want to do 3/4, means that we need to move it by half a tooth this way. And we know how to do that, how to move it half a tooth, by just rotating it 90 degrees. There you go. So now we are at 3/4 of a tooth. So now I wish I had 4 gears so I can stack them on top of each other and show you that we have 1/4 tooth increment. Well, that's the final result. We have 1/4 tooth increments. But why is this working? Well, there's one very important condition here in how the gear is built. Even if the axes here are perpendicular, we still need to have one very important thing that Jürgen pointed out in his email to me. The axis between these 3 holes, for example, cannot line up with the tip of the 2 opposite teeth. It doesn't line with this tooth and doesn't line with this tooth. If this was lining up like that, then flipping it around is gonna result in the exact same thing. We're gonna have a tooth at 0 degrees and we're gonna have a tooth at 180 degrees. However, the way it is built, like I can kind of mock it here, the axis through the centers of these 3 holes ends up being 1.07 degrees off of this tooth and 1.07 degrees off of this tooth. And why that number? Because that's 1/8 of a full tooth. The full tooth was 8.57, whatever Alexa said. So the axis through the centers of these 3 holes needs to be 1/8 of a tooth off. So what's gonna happen now if we flip this gear this way? This tooth is gonna end up offset on this side of the axis, and this tooth, when it goes there, it's gonna be offset on the other side of the axis. And then we're gonna have virtually this tooth moving 1/8 to the axis and another 1/8 to the other side of the axis. That's 1/4 tooth. And that's how simple it is. And then, of course, by turning it 90 degrees, we have another half a tooth, so we end up 1/4 from the previous one. I really wish I had 4 of these, but I'm gonna keep them. From now onward, I'm gonna keep them, and one day I'm gonna be able to make a video where I stack them all and show you all the 4 different positions of the teeth. But let me check also this one. So we can't go in this, can't go in this, can't go in this, and can't go in this. Okay, so apparently here, even this one has lash, but whatever. Here we can do the same thing. Let's test it. If we take a piece of tape and we tape it here, and let's get rid of the lash towards the right side. Let's see, we have a tooth here, 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 and here. By rotating it 90 degrees, now we have tooth here, here, and here, and here. By rotating it by flipping it this way, now we have a tooth right in between. Here, here, and here, and here, and here. And now if we turn it another 90 degrees, we have a tooth here, have a tooth here, here, and here. You see how fine-tuned that is. Well, still, this is, like we said, this is 2.14 degrees on this gear, but on the crankshaft that transfers into 4.25. So on the TR2, 3, and 4 engines, on the GT6, Spitfire, and TR250 engines, we can achieve increments of 4 degrees, 4.25 degrees on the crankshaft. On the TR6, and if we convert our GT6 and our TR250 to double roll, then we can only achieve 8.5 degrees on the crankshaft increments. So that's all, folks. I hope that that simplifies it in your head. It actually simplified it in my head. I couldn't kind of understand exactly how it was happening, the magic, but turns out that it is super simple. It's super simple and still it's genius. I still don't know how these people came up with these ideas. Anyways, that's gonna be everything for today. Stay tuned for more videos. The engine is now almost assembled. What's left is to put the oil pump in and the sump, and then the front cover, we need to change the tensioner, the seal, and install it. The rear seal needs to go in, and that's gonna be everything. After that, we need to wait for the head, which is still in the machine shop. But in the meantime, I have other things to do. On the car, I actually got the rubber for the rear shocks, the rubber bushings and the insulators for the rear springs that we figured out that we need to change. Also boots for the steering rack in the front. So we have things to do on the car as well. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching, commenting, subscribing, sharing and supporting the channel. Many of you comment that these videos are precious and they help you a lot in your restorations, and I'm super happy to be able to provide this for you. But I thank you for supporting the channel, because as usual I'll give you my lecture. I want to explain how without your support I'm not able to spend all this time editing these videos, because that's the most time consuming part of creating this content. Filming is easy because I'm here anyways, I'm doing the work, and I film with my phone, which is super easy. I just take it out of my pocket, stick it to the magnetic tripod, and I just press the recording button sometimes and then I go and do my work. So filming is easy, but I film hours and hours and hours and hours of work. And then I have to go and condense all that into 20 minutes, 30 minutes or an hour video, like 5 hours of work or 10 hours of work I need to condense into 1 hour video, and I have to go through the footage physically. Like some of it, of course, I speed up so I don't go through the entire footage, but when I'm talking while I'm working and I say things that I correct after that, now I need to figure out how to condense the speech, get rid of the parts where I said something stupid and then I corrected myself. But in the meantime, I need to keep the video going the same way. So what I do is I get rid of the sound, I put the sound clips together, and then I take the whole video, now that some of it doesn't have speech in it. So now I speed up the video and fit it into the same amount of my speech. So there are tricks that I use, but it takes time. So this is where your support is really helping me, because I can afford not working in the garage, but working on the computer creating this content. So we help each other, and I really appreciate this, our partnership. So you are my partners in this crime. Anyways guys, that's gonna be everything for today. The festive times are here, Christmas, Hanukkah and all these seasonal festive times that are in all our homes. So I wish you all the best. I'm gonna have another Christmas video, I'm guessing, but for now I wish you fantastic time, and I thank you so much for being with me and supporting me. I really appreciate it. The ways to support me are described in the description of this video, and if you're interested how to do it, you can go and find those. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.